As you know, we're famous for our technical hitches. This is take 2 of the live stream. We've got Cath here, who's going from Sling the Mesh, who's going to give you a talk about bad science. And this is all about bad. I've been involved for a long time, for decades. And when it comes to animal experiments, they're so horrible and so grotesque. How they treat them is so cold. It's a frightening world for the animals. And I think over the decades, one of the kind of, not mistakes, because it's obvious to go for the cruelty, because we're animal rights people. But what it seems it's very as clear as day, what's going to finish these experiments isn't the cruelty, it's going to be the science, because there isn't any. But we'll come to that.
We'll come to that. The flawed scientific evidence, the meaningless data for humans. It's and as you say, it's quite difficult to think that it's not the cruelty that's going to end it, and it will be the fact that the evidence is meaningless. When
the footage we have, the evidence we have of what happens inside the laboratories, the disgusting way they treat the dogs here should be enough, but it's not. Because they used to have this thing, didn't they? Yeah. It's a dog or your baby. Now we're discovering. Anyway, we'll come to that in the talk. So we're just talking about, you run a dog rescue place like locally.
Yep.
But we don't need an expert. Would you consider yourself a bit of an expert witness? I reckon, when it comes to like dog places.
But like you say, I don't think you'd need to be one
you
to
don't.
know that this is wrong here and the way the dogs are cared for.
And for the workers to leave at 10:30 a.m. today. The day's work is done.
Yeah.
How can that be?
Yeah,
there's dogs giving birth here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get away with that anywhere else.
They're already beginning to skid around in the wee and the poo, because remember, they never get out, they never see the sky.
Yeah.
There's nowhere like it.
No.
There's nowhere they get treats like it.
You'd never get away with this anywhere else.
Yeah, right, let's begin the talk in a sec. You can start the, whoa. We've got some nice visitors, we have a nice stream of angelic visitors, 2 more angels. There you go, look at that. It's really good. People have responded really, really nicely. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And it really keeps our spirits going. And we never want to be a sort of needy bunch. Why does anybody come to see us? But we've just had a constant stream of visitors over the festive period. Right, should we go then? So, folks, thank you for sticking with us with the technical glitches. Of course. What? Stop doing that sign language. We're just waiting for the Facebook stream to start. It's Cath. Let's look at Milo while we're waiting.
Yeah, nice thing to look at. Yeah.
We just stuck the fire on. Look at our space shuttle. Now, last year we used to get through on the gas. It was freezing, wasn't it? But like one bottle, it was down to 1 bottle a week at some time, and we were a bit gutted. So we'll come up with this idea. And we could. You just said the first thing is that, oh, it's warm in here. We can turn it off, actually.
Well, last year the gas bottle actually froze out. Even with the fire on, we had to go and get an electric fire.
What do you want?
The van.
I'm not.
Sit there.
So
For me to sit there. Okay. Do you want to put that on there? Or
Joe was part of cooking food. So
turn the fire off, isn't it? I reckon. It's a silly
on the
toasty.
bottle itself.
That's looking at somewhere else. Where's that looking? There. Wait there.
It's because
There. Right. Thanks for sticking with us, and over to Cath, really.
Yeah, thank you
You're
so
gonna have
much
to
for
move on.
inviting me here. A little bit of background, because a lot of people watching will have no idea who I am. So basically just a regular mum. I used to work as a journalist. After having kids, as I got like a bit older, struggled with coughs, sneezes, laughs, jumps on the trampoline, you know what I'm saying, and went to my doctor, and I was recommended to have a mesh sling. It was sold to me as gold standard surgery. Only take 20 minutes, day case, you're back at your desk within a week, and brilliant, you'll be fixed for life. So of course I trusted my doctor, trusted the consultant, and I went ahead and had this surgery. And I went in as really super fit, came out, could hardly walk, was in massive amounts of pain, and that was the moment as every day passed, I got worse and worse. Went online, and I felt really stupid that I'd only gone online after the surgery, and I googled up surgical mesh gone wrong, and I started seeing
We don't expect it, do you? You
No.
want to trust. You want to trust.
You want to trust. You want to be able to go to
You
your
shouldn't
doctor.
you shouldn't have to Google a doctor.
You shouldn't have to Google. And I suppose what my campaign has thrown me into a world that I never expected, of patient safety, of profits of the pharmaceutical industry that are put before patient safety. It's thrown me into a world of bad science, poor regulations, flawed, even fraudulent science. It's thrown me into a world of realising that a lot of the scientific literature is not even worth the paper it's written on. And obviously a lot of it's online published now, but a lot of it is so weak and low quality evidence for a whole variety of reasons, including animal testing, which is why I'm here today, because that is just one chapter in a whole story of why we can't trust a lot of the scientific evidence anymore.
I mean, once upon a time, society did trust.
Yeah.
Like the NHS, the history.
Yes.
It was great. What a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
A world-breaking idea.
Yep.
And then surely that your companies like Pfizer and Glaxo, they're there to help. They're there to look after our health. But the more you look, it's healthy profit.
It is
it's
healthy
like,
profit.
So,
and that was a real shock to me, because like a lot of people, you want to trust scientists. It's almost like you want to be able to trust certain professions, and they were one of the professions. I was shocked to learn of all the ways that scientific evidence can be hacked or presented in a mischievous manner, or there's so many different ways, and I'll go through some of those in the talk of how a product can be put in front of the market as being a really successful treatment for people, when in actual fact all the harms are downplayed, and the only thing on their mind, they're not creating cures, they're creating profits. And it was a shock to me, because although I'd worked as a journalist, I'd always worked in like local, weekly or regional papers around this area, to be honest. It was never my intention to be a big investigative journalist. I wasn't about that. I like working in the small community. And in fact, Caroline, who you met earlier at the start of your chat, I know Caroline, she's the local dog warden and local rescuing dogs in my local area. That's where I got my local rescue dog, and I love doing those sort of stories. And so I've been thrown into this huge, like, global narrative of corruption in scientific evidence.
Sorry to interrupt, but as a local person, did you know that this place existed?
I remember the protests that went on in the 90s. So I do remember about it. And
most people don't. Did you know of its existence?
I was very young in the 90s. Yeah, I've only lived up here 15 years, but shocked that a place like this still exists, to be fair.
Same.
That's probably my biggest
And
shock.
as a local person, I think my shock was, I assumed, because I was working as a journalist at the time for the Eastern Daily Press in Norfolk, so it's on the Norfolk-Cambridge border, but I was aware, living locally, of were you doing those? Yeah, okay, so I was aware of what you were doing at that time. And I just assumed it was shut down. So when Camp Beagle started up, 2.5 years ago, I'm like, hang on, that was the place that they were protesting about all those years ago. And I was honestly shocked, because you just assume that these things are stopped. You assume that this cruelty cannot carry on, and it does. And as a local person, and here's the other side of the narrative, I've always hated animal testing. I hate the fur trade. I was talking to you earlier about this, wasn't I? There's this almost PR spin of animal testing is a necessary evil, because there's people who'll think, well, my mum was cured of cancer and that was only because of animal testing. My child had this disease and that was only cured from animal testing. So there's like a PR spin that's absorbed by everybody. And it's only since running Sling the Mesh that I realised that it is literally that, a PR spin. 90% of animal research doesn't translate into meaningful, as you all know, evidence for humans. But what I saw at the time, when you'd have been protesting back in the 90s, were a lot of people locally were saying, oh, they're not going to get taken seriously because they're just going in with violence, they're just like activists, they're conspiracy theorists, do you know what I mean? They were downplaying your well-informed voices, which is still happening now, to be fair. People still believe the PR spin that animal testing is necessary, and that needs to change. It does need to change. So yes, you can see passionate about it, but I can come to it in like 2023 with a better informed voice than I had in the 90s, when I didn't really understand that animal testing was flawed, useless, mischievous, unnecessary, choose your word. So I will actually start my talk with this book. It's called Bad Science. It is by a Oxford University professor called Ben Goldacre. If you haven't heard of him, look him up. If you haven't heard of the book, get it off eBay. There's loads of second-hand copies you can get for £2 or £3. This outlines so many things that are wrong with science today. And like I said to you earlier, animal testing is just one element of it, if you like, that is wrong. It's just one part of a global story of flimsy, fraudulent scientific evidence. Animal testing is used to help push innovation. Now, a lot of people may have heard the word innovation. A lot of people have heard Rishi Sunak talking lately how he wants to make UK a life sciences superpower. All that means is he wants to push lots of new untested treatments onto the market. Innovation doesn't mean great necessarily. Innovation means new. New isn't always great. So animal testing is just part of that. It's being used as almost like fake proof. You know what I'm saying, don't you? Fake proof that, look, it must be right because we've tested it in these animals.
And they love new. This is all about new. This place has been here for 60 years, but the same dogs, the same vans have been used to go to the same labs for basically the same test. But it's for new products. They love their new product.
They love a new
Global
product.
capitalism works on new, improved.
Yep.
La la la.
Well, innovation is a misleading word.
Yes, it is.
Very.
A really misleading word. And so there's so God, which rabbit hole do I go down now with the word innovation? So in every country globally, there's various tests being done on animals. So for a start, why are we testing on so many animals globally when it's the same test being done in different countries, getting the same results? With the same flawed scientific evidence? For a start, that needs to stop. You know, if you're going to have I'm not against innovation, don't get me wrong, but I am pro good quality evidence that is meaningful and causes the least harm to animals, absolute least harm to animals and humans. So all these tests being done in multiple countries, for a start, needs to stop. I'm going to talk, my expertise, if you like, or my learning has come from having to learn about medical devices, thrown in at the deep end as a harm patient and trying to work out, oh my God, how do I change this? How do I raise awareness? What do I do? And so I learned that medicines so as bad as medicines are, medical devices are even worse. So medicines go through three phases of clinical trials. Medical devices can be approved for use with no trials at all, nothing. All they need to be is equivalent to something already on the market. So the first plastic hernia meshes started to be implanted at the end of the 1950s. That will have been after some animal testing. But leap forward into the 90s, someone's decided, hang on, this same polypropylene plastic mesh material, we can use those as slings for women to help stop incontinence. There was no clinical trials, no evidence, nothing at all. It was approved on something called equivalence, and they started implanting that into women in the late 90s, like I say, based on the equivalence route. The very first sling caused so many complications that was taken off the market 2 years later, but by then it was too late because loads of other slings had already been approved. And on the back of that, incontinence slings, loads of different models were approved. On the back of that, prolapse mesh was approved in the early 2000s. On the back of that, a rectal prolapse mesh was approved on equivalence around about 2005. On the back of that, there will have been mesh approved for men's mesh who've had mesh slings because they've suffered incontinence after prostate cancer. And then on the back of that, we've also started having women who have mesh used as part of their mastectomy repair after breast cancer. So you've got this flawed regulation of all these different hernia, prolapse, incontinence, breast meshes. Now once they're approved, that's when the animal testing really cuts in, because they want to they've approved it, it's being used, but they want to back it up by doing all these animal studies. Most of the mesh studies are in sheep. They're also done in dogs, rabbits, monkeys, mice, rats, mini pigs, and they're testing for a whole variety of different things, but the key thing they're testing for is, does it work? Now you tell me, how can this translate into meaningful evidence? You're putting a piece of polypropylene plastic mesh into an animal And then you're telling me that it works for incontinence. How do they know? How do you know that's fixed an animal's incontinence? Now, if you translate it into for females, they would ask us after the operation, do you still need to wear a tenor pad? I was trying to reconnect. Is it okay? So have we got a technical hitch?
Before
One
we've
says
got
live,
technical
one says not.
hitches. Finish, don't press finish. I
No.
think. Well, whose phone's this?
That one's live.
Is this the
So
fake
it's
one?
mine.
Hey!
Technical hitch, I love them.
We're full of them.
So you have so they're trying to prove that this product works in an animal that can't talk about pain, and that's a big thing in my campaign. Women in chronic pain. More than 50% of women have constant urinary tract infections, but a lot of them don't show up on the DIP tests. So how is a dog, a mini pig, a sheep, how are you going to know that they're really sore from a urinary tract infection? Again, wasted research.
And how do you give the animal
do you-
the incontinence in the first place?
yeah.
Whatever you're doing, it's not going to be the
It's
same
meaningless.
type of incontinence that a woman has.
Absolutely.
Is the... you know why this might be? Because of the bloody... Can we open our space shuttle? It's actually... Can we open the front up?
It's in.
Ah.
It's fading through.
Oh, it might just be on this phone. Okay, carry on.
Oh, so
Yeah.
signal's fine on IG. Thank
Yeah, yeah.
you, whoever that is.
Yeah.
I haven't got my glasses, so I can't read who
Go on.
that is. Sorry.
Fine.
Um,
Just say anything about the signal, and I can see it fine.
So there's these meaningless experiments. Now, not only is, the...
And then say them incontinence with a mouse.
Yeah,
Who's
incontinence.
there with 10,000 mouse in the room to go through each individual mouse? How are you today?
Yeah,
It's
and
rubbish,
you've got
right?
an animal. So in real world setting, you've got women who've had like a mesh for incontinence or prolapse. Now they're going to be going out, doing the food shopping, lifting up children or grandchildren, going for a run. Obviously, some are having periods, using tampons, having sexual intercourse. That's all relevant to everyday life. An animal in a cage is stuck, not moving, not having any weight bearing, not having any of these extra things that lead to something called erosion. Now, anyone listening will be like, what's erosion? Now, you've got, I'll get a sling out here. You've got so mesh. It's made
I
of
know
polypropylene
people.
plastic.
It's getting to the point where everyone kind of knows someone.
Okay.
Like our friend Mark's got he's in hospital at the minute because of the mesh that they did have that they left in actually.
Wow. Well, this is the most commonly used mesh kit. Now, the hooks don't stay in. They look brutal, right? But they are brutal. But they do actually come out. Some people have said to me, "Oh my God, are they still inside you?" But so that's what inserts it underneath the urethra and holds the urethra up. Now, this is, I don't know, you obviously won't be able to tell, but if I hold it up, that's like a piece of the plastic mesh.
Oh.
Now, you run your finger along the top of that and you tell me what that feels like.
Oh yeah, it's actually harsh, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a knife.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Mm.
And that's and you'll again, I don't think you'll be able to see. Oh no, you might be able to see actually.
Yeah, you can see that.
Okay. So
Billions of years of evolution would have got rid of that bit,
yeah,
innit? You
yeah.
know?
But you can see it's almost it starts to fragment a bit. Now this is a kit. I'm not even going to tell you how I managed to get hold of this, but I did manage to get hold of this, and I love to bring it out at talks because you can see pieces have fragmented off it. That's what happens once it's implanted into women for incontinence, men for hernia, or whatever it's used for. It can fragment. It's already brittle, but over time it can turn even more brittle, and it acts like an internal knife. So if you've had that like vaginal mesh, that can cut through vaginal walls. It's horrific. Women report their partners being cut while they're having intercourse. We have men on the page where this material has sliced their spermatic cord. They've lost their sex life. They can't have children. We have women who have it sliced into their bladders and their bowels, and they've had to have them removed, and they've now got stomas. This plastic mesh was approved on the basis of equivalence and then backed up with meaningless animal evidence, because you've got an animal stuck in a cage that's not moving, right? It's not going through its daily life. It's not having any pressure put on something that's already brittle. And then it's a short-term study. So a lot of the animal studies, they might have only sort of implanted that for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, up to maybe 6 months maximum. This stuff is like a ticking time bomb. It can... We have women in the page who their mesh implant was fine for 2, 3, 5, even one woman at 16 years, she'd been fined for 16 years with her mesh sling, and after 16 years, this sliced through her bladder. She had to have her bladder removed, and she has constant urinary tract infections. She is so sick. But those short-term flawed animal studies, they didn't show any of that. So not only have animals suffered but extreme cruelty from useless mesh experiments, hundreds and thousands of women globally have then suffered as a consequence of, where's my book? Bad Science. Where have I put my Bad Science book? It's under there. Because of bad science. You know, these short-term studies mean nothing. In particular, in relation, I'll pass that round if you want to have a little. It's horrific stuff. Now, the other element of that.
So it's like what you get a bag of carrots.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, horrific. And we all hear a lot about plastic pollution in the oceans. You know, there's a lot of talk about the plastic pollution. There's a lot of talk about plastic in landfill, but they're just merrily putting it inside patients as a medical device. Hang on.
What is known about plastic on the ocean is that it breaks down into micro small pieces, and that's going to be happening inside your body.
It's leaching toxins every single day. So the tests or checks, if you like, that were never done on what's called a host response. No one ever looked into the autoimmune response to putting a piece of plastic into patients. And what I see a lot of on our page is that people have a lot of autoimmune diseases, like we have Hashimoto's. Lots of people, myself included, have fibromyalgia, which is downplayed as stress related, but there's a lot of research coming out of King's College in London now that shows fibromyalgia is an autoimmune disease. So it's like your body reacting to plastic. That's what it is. That we have Lichen sclerosus, that's another autoimmune disease. Psoriasis, there's food allergies, IBS, you name it. All these additional illnesses that are being caused by that piece of plastic that's been put into people. Again, none of the animal studies pick that up. So all these animals have been harmed, and the data's meaningless, irrelevant, leading to, well, there's 10,000 people on my support group from around the world, all suffering, a lot of them being ignored.
And you think to yourself, well, this seems simple enough. We've got a controversial mesh.
Yeah.
Let's take a minute, step back, because you've got the surgeons putting this mesh in, like consultant. They're extremely genius, intelligent people.
Yeah.
They're not. You think to yourself, they're not going to use something that's potentially going to endanger you. But then when you start to scratch, it's like you get this massive industry where the company producing the mesh are going to do everything they can to block that mesh being taken off the market. And that's where the animal experiments come in again, because they can confuse and and we need more data and we need more research. You know, everyone's screaming this mesh is a stupid idea, and I dare say it'll go, but will it take another 5 years, 10 years?
It'll take a long time and a lot more harm. And what I'm seeing happening is, while one type of mesh has been banned in the UK, another type of mesh was suspended 5 years ago. But globally, that type of mesh, in fact, that one that's you're holding, that's still used globally. And where they're really pushing it is in countries like India, China, Japan, where, you know, people are not going to be able to find my page because of the language barrier. They're not going to be able to access any scientific evidence because they can't understand English. So they're very clever and very aggressively market a product based on, again, flawed scientific evidence, which includes your flawed animal studies.
Yeah.
The other dreadful thing I've learned is, again, we all assume we can trust not just our doctors but our regulators. So there's the regulator called the MHRA, Medicines Healthcare Regulatory Agency in this country. Now, they're pretty much funded by industry, so that they're marking their own homework. So they're supposed to be checking treatments are safe, but a lot of the time they're turning a blind eye. Now, we have something called, I don't know if anyone listening has heard of the yellow card system. Oh mate, I know. So the yellow card...
That should be the most, that's the last wall of defence, the yellow card, isn't it?
And what
Tell
happens...
people what it is. It's the GPs, isn't it?
So the yellow card is a system for either doctors or members of the public to report health complications.
That phone, because we keep losing lots of signal on Facebook, so I'm gonna sign off this one. It's just all the time doing this. I put Emma's.
Hang on, it's not loading.
It's there now. What about if you move the phone back?
They are looking at.
What about if we just move the phone back a bit? It'd be good to keep this one going. Move the phone back, because yellow card should be that's the last offence. They've got it on the market.
Yep.
And now we know, because that's the big experiment. Now it's been released onto people. So that yellow card system. I remember going around to see a friend, and she had all the curtains shut, and it was dark. It was in the middle of the day. I goes, "What's going on?" She goes, "I went to see my doctor. I've been feeling really depressed, and he's put me on this. I wanted therapy, but he said, I can get you to the top of the therapy. I can get you a psychiatrist, but if you take part in this system, you know, like a trial, this drug's on trial." And he was given a massive migraine and a headache, and that's probably never going to appear on no yellow card thing, you know.
It's not going to be logged.
Get people to Google yellow card. It's such an important system.
It's really important. I mean, it became. The public are probably more aware of it now following the COVID vaccine. I mean, that's a whole other Google rabbit hole I don't really want to go down today. But it has raised awareness of the yellow card, which is excellent, but it's not enough. And as part of my campaigning over the last 8 years and it's not just me, it's other patient safety campaigners, all we want, this is such a simple fix, make a little leaflet that you put in prescription bags that says, if you have a problem with this prescription, log it to the yellow card. That's all you need to do. A bit like TripAdvisor. You know, if you've had a bad meal or a bad hotel, we want everyone to think yellow card and immediately go there, because at the minute, people, it's not on everyone's radar. Now, creating a leaflet and putting it in a prescription bag should be really easy. No, they won't do it, because actually, if you've got a regulatory agency funded by the pharmaceutical industry, they probably don't really want to know just how bad the complications are. But that's another element of, here we go, I'm holding the book again, of bad science. They're not logging complications and they're not tracking it. So like you say, something's rushed onto the market based on meaningless animal studies, based on flawed scientific evidence, and there's not even anyone at the other end checking. It's like parking a load of ambulances at the bottom of a cliff and letting people just fall in. Oh well, fall in you go. And it's shocking. I've been shocked how poor not just the scientific evidence, but the following up afterwards, the regulation and the data capture is. It's just not there.
Because it's like we're trying to not frighten people, but get people to be worried about Glaxo, because the people like them, because maybe they're not in business at all to help the world, you know. They're there to make money and the good old money and these pension funds, and we must take they used to have power, they still have power, but we need to take it, and we're little grassroots like things like yours, like ours, just got to not trust these people. They're in business, let them make their money. But
they're in business, so they're not there for cures, they're there for the profits, and
that's always going to be the way. But they shouldn't be leading, they shouldn't be the ones dictating. Like with your mesh thing, I was just thinking, say even down to your GP or the consultants, it's not like the people who produce the mesh give they might do in other countries, brown envelopes under tables, but this will be about going to the conference. It just happens to be in the Bahamas with your golf trip laid on and all the rest of it.
So you say it's not about brown envelopes, but actually that's a really big part of my campaign. I want transparency of payments. So doctors will take money in a variety of ways.
Can we hold them in? Can we just reboot the router a minute? Because they're both of them are breaking up now.
Okay.
Can we just pull the thing?
Hold with it, folks. Anyone watching it, there's a Camp Beagle person. But it's gonna get. But you get the atmosphere, and this is part of the atmosphere. You know, it really is. You know, we've got all the because we've struggled for 2.5 years on the side of this road. Once upon a time, pot noodles, and then nothing worked. We had no technology, but
just kept blowing away. That's all I ever remember. Everything's blowing up the road.
But people still watching us. They're still with us. Have people got a good enough signal? We are just that's from us.
I'm just letting people know we're just resetting that now.
Well done, folks.
Yeah, no, it felt important to come here and not just sit at my desk at home, which is meaningless. Here, this is where it's happening. And as difficult as my campaign is, I can almost deal with the upset. I can almost compartmentalise it to be able to get on and do some positive campaign work. But I couldn't do what you guys do here. I couldn't. It's so upsetting and such hard work. I mean, you know.
It's a place of tears.
Yeah.
This place.
Yeah.
What's up, then?
100%.
Technical Hitchy.
Okay.
Roll on.
It's going to eat it with something in a minute.
Yeah.
Michael from America, he gave this banging talk, and we couldn't record it or nothing.
Oh.
Come on, fake book.
How's it going
I
in
just
there?
wondered,
Okay,
would it
everything's
be
back
worth
on.
recording it as well, just on a phone, so we can post it?
Yeah, we kind of
Yes,
halfway
but
through.
imagine if we recorded this. Da, 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 da.
Okay, I think we're going.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Are you on Facebook? No.
Dave's on
No, look, it's
Facebook,
gone
I'm on
off.
Instagram.
Post for 30 days. We'll post it, so we'll post it again now. This is part 2. We'll keep going. Keep with it, people. This is Camp Beagle. We never give up. Do, 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 do. Oh, some classics today, isn't there? You'll take a deep breath.
Yeah.
You want to
Let's go.
change phone? Maybe it's my phone.
No, I think it's on both. to be
Nah,
honest.
it's just-
Yeah.
Signal. It's nobody's phone.
Yeah, it's stopping and starting on.
Right.
Instagram seems okay. Okay.
Well done, Camp Beagle Posse, sticking with it. Ah, right. Hello, hello. This is take 3,
Somebody said they can hear you, so we're all okay.
and then people will hopefully join this. So, roll them really. Keep going. Where we were talking about the yellow card.
People are saying Instagram's fine,
Okay.
Okay.
so Instagram's okay.
I would like to say that I was really looking forward to have you here,
Oh,
Cath.
thank you.
Because our angle and where we're always coming from is the suffering of the animals
Yeah, yeah.
in all of this.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just think it's really important that at the end of the day there is lots of human suffering because animal testing
Yeah.
also, and we don't often bring that angle
Yes.
into our debate.
And it is a patient safety issue, of course, because if you've got 90% of treatments that aren't either giving meaningful evidence, or it works in an animal and not in a human, or doesn't in an, or the other way around, that's a patient safety issue. It is. It's all hand in hand. And
with the mesh, I think when it goes wrong, it goes it can go catastrophic. It's not mild. I bet there's scales, but I've heard stories of
Yeah.
like
well, so
ruining people's lives.
Yeah. We have women who they perhaps had the incontinence mesh surgery because they wanted to run the London Marathon and they didn't want embarrassing leaks, and they're now in wheelchairs. I mean, it's that bad. Some of the people, 1 in 4 on my page need some kind of mobility aid, so like a stick or a wheelchair or a scooter. You can have a mesh removal, but it's like picking chewing gum out of matted hair. This isn't easy surgery. A mesh removal is really complex and dangerous.
Somebody must be held responsible
But that, yeah.
for people's lives being ruined like that.
And the dreadful thing is, there's such a mass scale of harm, and yet this was promoted aggressively across the NHS as a cheap, quick fix. The accountants loved it. So of course that's quite embarrassing that was aggressively marketed by the NHS, by the Royal Colleges, by the surgeon societies. You know, how embarrassing that here we are with so many suffering, and yet they were the ones promoting it. And like you were talking about, the brown envelopes and the backhanders.
Yeah.
That does work, but in a slightly different way. So surgeons might have been, come to Brazil for this amazing 4-star luxury conference. Bring your wife and kids, and we'll train you a little bit while you're there and talk about mesh. Or they're paid to run a study. Or
That's what this doctor. That's what he was doing. He's running a study, and he wanted her to partake in his trial of this new depression drug.
Yes.
And it was destroying the woman, but she was pleased because she was going to get a therapist
Yes.
quicker.
And they think it's new, and they think new is great. I mean, we had one mesh surgeon up in Scotland. He had secretly took £100,000 for his research. He took that money from the makers of the mesh that he was trialing. So of course what then happens is you overstate the benefits and you downplay the risks, and then suddenly this product's launched on the market. He said that it caused no thigh pain. That particular type of mesh sling has caused the worst thigh and hip pain in women's obturator nerves. That is the mesh that puts women in wheelchairs. That is the mesh that slices through people's like nerves and makes it really difficult for them to walk, their legs shake. And yet let's track it back to £100,000 of secret funding. So that's yet another element of why our scientific evidence is so flawed. A lot of it is funded by industry, who of course, you know, on a really simple level, as a journalist, you know, we'd perhaps get invited onto a press trip to a lovely spa break, wherever it was. Am I really going to write a bad review when they've just sent me on a nice spa break with free alcohol and food? Do you know what I mean?
And they
on a subconscious level, it's not even conscious sometimes. It's on a subconscious level. You're overstating the benefits, underplaying the risk. And you know, no one's going to die or be harmed because I've perhaps overstated a spa break. Someone is going to be harmed because they've overstated a new drug or a new medical device and downplayed the risks. It's
and the mesh
safety.
manufacturers are probably the same as the drug manufacturers.
Yeah.
The drug manufacturers, I think it's that they spend three times more on marketing the product than they do the research.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So another thing in the scientific literature that I've had to like, I don't have a background in science at all. I've had to learn how to read it. Now, any new piece of evidence, it has something at the top called an abstract. It's almost like the conclusion, but at the top. So in the abstract is, oh, this is what the paper's about, so you don't have to bother reading it. Now, a lot of abstracts, they're lies. I can't think of a better word. I perhaps should. Maybe that's defamatory. Let me think of another word.
George Bernard Shaw said anyone that wouldn't hesitate to vivisect would hardly hesitate to lie about it.
Yeah, 100%.
They have to lie. You know, lie, but lie.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Thatcher called it... no, it wasn't a lie. I was just being economical with the truth.
Economical with the truth. And let's use that one. So, for example, there was one particular mesh paper where it fully admitted that this type of mesh caused pain for 40% of women. Yet in the abstract at the top, it didn't mention that. It just said, mesh is a good treatment for curing incontinence. And you're like, hang on a minute. You've deliberately hidden that harm right down in the bottom of the paper. So if you're a busy medic or a busy whatever you're busy doing, you're going to look at the abstract and think, oh, that's great, but it's hidden. It's shocked me. I was really shocked.
It's shocking, isn't it? What about America with the opiates?
Yeah.
Like, and you hear on the news like Glaxo, I keep saying Glaxo, I've got nothing to do with Glaxo, it's the only one. They've had to pay $137 billion in a civil suit. And you think to yourself, well, they've learnt their lesson then.
No.
That's no problem. That's still within the marketing plan to pay the out-of-court settlement, as long as you get it on the market, on the market. It's a mad world.
Didn't mesh come through Johnson & Johnson?
Yeah, they were the...
via another subsidiary of Johnson who actually put it onto the market.
So the first sling was made by a company called Boston Scientific, and it's called Protogen. It caused so many complications, within 2 years it was taken off the market. But by then, Johnson & Johnson had got a sniff of that and realised, hang on, we can make a lot of money. So they'd made their own mesh, Johnson & Johnson, branded it under Gynecare. And so while the very first grandmother mesh, if you like, was removed off the market, Johnson & Johnson had already got theirs approved on equivalence. And so despite the very first one being taken off because of complications, oh no, J&J have got theirs. Yeah. And that's the one that I brought in. It's a Johnson & Johnson mesh.
I read somewhere that that's this equivalence thing. If you could say that your material or process was the same as one that was already running, you didn't have to prove that it was okay.
So vaginal,
it's equivalent.
Yeah, vaginal mesh was deemed as equivalent to hernia mesh, but it's a totally different site of the body, totally different application, totally different everything.
It feels to me like there is like a layer of systems to profits for these companies to make profits.
It is, and like I said, and I will keep coming back to, the animal testing is part of those layers.
Yes, one of the layers.
It worked because we put it in some pigs and it's fine. So some
another
of the
layer. We don't really, because it's medical devices, we don't really need to make too many tests.
Yes.
Another layer. We're not going to promote a yellow card so that we don't have any population information.
But it's
like,
but it is layers.
All to try to cover up a massive profit-making.
So the other way, so some of the other like flawed science it's called outcome measure logging. So for the incontinence mesh, all they logged was, do you still need to use a 10 pad? Right, that was the logging. That's it in the UK by the surgeon societies. They weren't logging. Oh, I can't walk. I'm in lots of pain. I've got constant UTIs. None of that was being logged. All they were logging was, do you use a tenor pad? And it's called.
And assuming it did actually.
And it worked
for that.
It worked. But so loads of women on my page. It worked, but they're now in a wheelchair. What is the point of scientific evidence with flimsy, flawed, whatever word you want to use, outcome logging? And a lot of that is in the animal testing as well. They'll only be looking at one thing and ignoring the new onset of complications. It's bad science.
So some of the articles I read, literally every they all showed, they called it erosion.
Yes, it is erosion. Yeah.
Erosion, and what it also said was that all four-legged animals.
Yeah.
And so the angle,
yes,
it acts like a sling.
Yeah.
But you put it in a human being who's standing
vertically,
like,
and you're doing the weight bearing that I was saying earlier with
the whole weight bearing is completely different.
Yeah, completely different. There's other things that they can do. There's something called pea hacking, and I'm like, again, like when I'm learning all this stuff, I'm like, what's pea hacking? These are scientists. We should trust them. Pea hacking is you set up an experiment and you're like, let's see how much pain people are in. We'll have a questionnaire. Are you in pain from 1 to 10? And they decide before they start the trial, we're going to take notice of anyone that says they're in pain from score 6 to 10. But when the results come in, there's loads of people scoring 6 to 10, so they move the goalposts. That's pea hacking, and they only take notice of people that scored 8 to 10. Mm-hmm. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they've moved the goalpost. You're like, hang on a minute. So now they've realised something's causing harm, but if we change the goalpost and it doesn't look so bad, no one will know. That's pea hacking. Shocking. Undeclared industry funding, we've talked about that. So that is a real problem, a massive problem. Of, the minute you start taking payment in whatever shape or form, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It creates bias. Industry ropes in what's called key opinion leaders. So that might be doctors. There's a lot of patient groups out there funded by industry. I would just like to say, I take no funding. What I do it based on anger and coffee. I take no money whatsoever. I'm just furious. And I sit bashing at my keyboard, angry, pro bono, voluntary. But there are a lot of they look like patient
It's so subtle, isn't it? Paying. It seems good, doesn't it?
Seems good.
We want to listen to the patient, so let's have a patient's forum. It sounds so brilliant.
But it's not. And what happens is, if you've got perhaps a small patient group, or they're supporting a particular arena, someone from industry might come and say, well, we can do your website. Would you like us to sort that for you? And of course people would, because they're busy, they don't have the skills. That it sounds great, but actually you're then a puppet, and you're being, the puppet master is helping to control the narrative on your patient group that is then perhaps pushing particular treatments. Health charities, there's another one. They're really powerful key opinion leaders to promote certain treatments. I don't have to go down that rabbit hole. Again, industry funding it. We've got repeat trials doing the same thing, coming up with the same results in loads of different countries, harming way more animals than it needs to. Why are we doing repeat tests with yet more meaningless evidence?
Now with Brexit, they want to repeat all the tests that they've been done already.
Yeah, of course. And it's dreadful, just unnecessary harm. There's something called vanity publishing. Well, it probably doesn't even need to describe it. People's egos, so therefore they wanna publish something. Scientific journals are more likely to publish stuff that's positive, not negative. So that means anything that's causing harm, we don't perhaps get to hear about. There's something else, science by press release, I call it. So journalists nowadays just trust what's on a press release and copy and paste it, and it's out there. They're not even looking into all these things I've talked about that might be flawed. They're not even beginning to think about, hang on, they'd only tested that on mice, or they only tested that on rabbits. I don't know if that translates to being a useful drug or device for a human. There's so many flaws.
We're evolving, aren't we? The image I have is like 1950s, 60s America, black and white TV, someone with a suit and shirt and tie going, hi everyone, we've got this new product.
Yes.
It's safe, don't worry, we've tested it. And people used to...
Yeah, but it's still like that.
You'd have your sort of, I don't know, your rebels into society. But people used to believe people with suits and ties.
Yeah. But
now, hopefully, but we can't lose a lot of trust. But when you like, your stories are the same as our stories, and it goes back to borrowing of money.
Yes, it does.
And sorry Glaxo to keep picking on you, but the directors of Glaxo, they're not who they are actually accountable to, and they're accountable to more legally than anybody else, is their shareholders. They, the directors of Glaxo, need to make money. They can go to prison for not fulfilling the wishes of their shareholders, and it's only about money. And if we could just, I could say that's like La La Land. If we could take money out of the equation, then we probably wouldn't be sitting here anyway. And
it's a well-oiled machine now. It's really slick. So much money is pumped into all these things I'm talking about, supporting. There's also something called all-party parliamentary groups. So, for example, we have a surgical mesh all-party parliamentary group. We perhaps meet a couple of times a year. Some amazing supportive politicians. We get no funding. We don't want any funding. We're doing it because it's the right and honourable thing to do. But a lot of them take money to have a secretariat function, or they take money. So, for example, even there's an e-cig all-party parliamentary group. I mean, you get them on all sorts, but e-cig, guess who funds that?
Tobacco industry.
Well, it's the vaping industry association. You're like, hang on a minute. And there's all these parliamentary groups that are funded by those with a vested interest, and we need more cynicism out there. People need to be more cynical of how products are getting to market, how they're promoted, how they're backed up, and not just to blindly trust, and to perhaps look behind the narrative, look behind the PR spin, do your research. Don't just trust what you're being told, especially when it comes to your health and medicines, because as we said lots of times during this talk, it's not about cures, it's profits before patient safety.
And you use the word cynicism. Like, once upon a time it was impossible to argue with a teacher or a doctor. Previous generations gone by, not impossible, but it was just so frowned upon. Yes. And it's good, because these people, they are the experts. They're people that we should go to. But a bit of cynicism, I think, is healthy.
Yeah, agree.
I think they need to know people are watching.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what they need to know.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're watching you.
Yeah.
We know what you're doing.
Yeah. Have you heard of the Grimace scale?
Yeah.
I only found out about this morning. I was preparing for the talk, and I was just looking at some of the animal research into mesh. And if anyone hasn't heard of it, the Grimace scale it's like this whole thing, and how apparently you can look at a mouse and its face to see if it's grimacing, to work out if it's in pain. And there's posters of mice and rats on the Grimace scale, so the researchers can come along and try and score if that medicine or medical device is causing them pain. And I nearly fell off my chair. I'm like, is this science? The Grimace scale? Are you joking me? And, obviously in relation to mesh, how can you tell an animal's in pain? You can't. They can't talk of pain. And a Grimace scale is meaningless. And I'm shocked.
And on top of that, they're actually ignoring the voices of the women who are in pain.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
It's like you're dedicating all this effort to work out what pain is in a rat or in a mouse, when you're actually ignoring the ones that speak plain English and are telling you we are in pain.
Yeah. It's just meaningless, and it's so upsetting knowing of all the cruelty being inflicted upon animals for no good reason other than pushing innovative new treatments onto the market.
And is there a lot of dismissal, like Solid says,
of women's voices? And not just women's, actually. There's been a lot of publicity in media, I hope helped by my campaign, about misogyny in medicine and how women's voices are ignored. But in all honesty, anyone who is harmed by healthcare treatment will probably have their voice ignored. So it's men and women. We have 5% of members of our page are men with hernia mesh, and again, their voices are ignored. Or you're treated like a mystery patient, or everyone else is all right. That all the evidence says that mesh is great, and you've just been unlucky. And there's a powerful narrative about silencing anyone who's harmed by healthcare treatment. And my hairdresser, she suffered terribly after the COVID vaccine, and again her voice was silenced. The doctor said, no, I think you're fine, you're probably just stressed. And actually I urged her to log her symptoms, which we thought was Guillain-Barré. It has since been diagnosed as that on the yellow card, and that has actually now since emerged as quite a common, well, I say common, but there's a lot of people out there who've had the Guillain-Barré syndrome after the COVID vaccine, and yet when she first went to the doctor it was very much dismissed. Now what is that? Because that's not her doctor being a horrible person, but there's almost this narrative around, if you don't know how to fix it, They would shuffle them away. What is that? I'm not even sure what that is. I don't know. But it's a really common narrative that harmed patients are not taken seriously.
Well, because it's the knockout for all these other systems in place to do all the profiting. Yes. So these are the voices that are saying, hold on a minute, this needs to be restructured, and they don't want to restructure anything whatsoever.
It's like recently I've found some information about Banton and Kingman, which is this parent. It's dirty fingers in dirty pies. Yes. Always, it's a kind of the parent company in this country of MBR, but it manages it, and they were supplying beagles for horrible experiments against paraquat. You know, paraquat, a weed killer. Very, very toxic weed killer that people for decades were begging the authorities in this country to ban paraquat. It's finally been banned, finally, after decades. But we've still got a gigantic factory in this country, in Huddersfield, run by good old Syngenta, just about the largest company in the world. They're owned by something called China Chem, and that says what it is, China Chem. It's the Chinese chemical industry. They own the factory in Huddersfield that produces paraquat, and they produce hundreds of thousands of tons to it to this day. But it's all exported to like India and all the rest of it. And that's what's going to happen with. I think
there's a real problem with kidney disease from pesticides of the agricultural workers at the moment. In I think it's Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
It's just horrible.
I know.
And it's again going back to, we know this stuff harms. We know it causes complications. Why are you carrying it on? Well, again, we come back to profits.
We
but
keep coming back. Sometimes we come to other conclusions. Today, that seems to be the one we keep going back to.
It is.
I would like to ask you about how you keep going, because you've been involved in you've set up your group many years ago. How many years?
8.5 years. Yeah.
You started with 20 people, and now you're a massive international group, and you don't get paid.
Nope.
So what drives you? What keeps you going? And Sling, and Mesh is still being used.
It is.
So
what keeps me going? Generally speaking, honestly, anger channeled into positive action. I get so angry, as I'm sure you do here, and I do some of my best work when I'm really angry, because I sit at my keyboard and I channel it and I research and I write. For me, I write. So I might write blogs, or when I was I'm not a journalist anymore. Sadly, I had to come out of the industry because it's a dying industry, which breaks my heart again, because it's a level of accountability that's being lost. Anyway, but I would write newspaper articles, I now write blogs, or I'd write emails or social media posts, or I write out of sheer anger. How do I look after myself? Actually, gigs. So I love drum and bass. I love roots, reggae, sound system culture. There's something about that really heavy drum bass where I can just switch off. And movies. So Caroline, who we met earlier, her lovely partner works in our local movies, doesn't he? So I might as well have my own seat with my name on at the movies, because that's the only times I can switch off, is either at really, really loud gigs or at the movies where, there's a massive screen and I have to switch off. And I've had to learn to stop crying. Yeah,
I want to ask you a question.
I still cry, but I've had to learn to manage it.
Have you spoken with surgeons who are still using the mesh, and have you had conversations about, are you listening, or how's that go? Or,
well, they don't like me very much.
No.
Funny enough.
Well, they're not speak to you then. Do you know it?
Well, they've been in meetings where they're there, but they're very wary of me, because
you can imagine it, can't you? Lifting the eyebrows, touching her, she goes again, with their dicky bow on, the dicky bow, they like the dicky bow,
even if they're not doing it, they're doing this.
Yeah.
The eyes are rolling. It's what's really upsetting at the moment. So there was a huge review by Baroness Cumberledge called the First Do No Harm Review, looking at the safety of mesh, and it was thanks to her that she suspended one type because it was so dangerous. And there's been specialist mesh removal centres set up across the UK, and what is really upsetting, it's becoming quite clear that the surgeons who are removing mesh with one hand are desperate to have that suspension lifted, so with the other hand they can put it in.
Mm.
And you'd be thinking, what the hell is that about? A lot of them are lost their old school skills to do traditional repairs for prolapse and incontinence, and indeed hernia, because it's easier to quickly bang in a bit of plastic. So if you've lost all your traditional skills, you want to get that surgery back, because that's what you know and you can do, and it's a quick easy win, but it's also quite a big money earner in private practice. So where some surgeons might go and play golf at the weekend, others might put three of their meshes in. There's so many nuances to this story, but that is really upsetting for women to find out that the people who are having to trust to remove mesh implants actually would quite like to lift the suspension and bring it back in. Horrible. It's horrible. I know, it's mind-blowing.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think, or hopefully, that people have not had it done because of your page?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started a new job a couple of years ago, and you do like the big Teams meeting, and after that Teams meeting, someone actually sent a message saying, "Can I give you a call?" It's going to make me cry. Hang on.
Sorry.
No. Do you know, I have to work really hard on not crying. Some things get to me. Oh, this one gets me.
People, it's just a place of tears. People say sorry when they cry. Carry on crying. People like to see tears.
It is to stop people ending up like the people that are on the page.
And she actually rang me up and had a private Teams chat with me and said, "I want to thank you so much because of your campaign. I didn't have surgery." And we have people. There was someone yesterday. I'm still up. This is the madness, right? I might be in my bed scrolling, googling. I mean, I'm just on it constantly, right? So I approved a woman's post in the early hours. It's probably 2 o'clock this morning. And she's over in America. Oh God, it's going to make me cry again. Sorry, how embarrassing. But she was due surgery in a couple of days' time, and I've joined her quickly on the page because she wanted to find out more, and I know she's cancelled her surgery. That to me means everything.
You stop somebody going through it.
Lots of people
and is there moves within the mesh world to acknowledge that they've made a massive mistake and to produce some new using? Because we want people to use their minds. We want mesh, don't we? Or do we? I think. Well, no, but imagine some boingy organic mesh that was like that disintegrated when it should do. It had a little nano chip in it.
There's biomesh coming in, but biomesh, this is quite vile. It's either made from animal, usually pig, or cadaver. Do you know the word cadaver?
Is that
dead body?
That's basically dead body. So there are biomeshes which in theory are supposed to be better. I suspect they probably are better than a piece of polypropylene plastic, but we do have members on the page who've had hideous side effects and complications from having a biomesh. There's still risk.
Because wouldn't your immune system?
Yes,
so you're still
immune response.
Your body's still going to fight. It's still a foreign body.
Still a foreign body.
Probably more than the plastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's organic.
And it'll have cells and stuff.
And there are people out there who, they've had hernia mesh for however many years and they're absolutely fine, and then you get someone else who isn't. And from looking at the page, I would say if people have existing allergies, there is research going on now at the moment on cells, saying if you have any existing allergies, be it hay fever, dog allergy, nickel allergy, you will already have like this immune thing going on, and then bang, put in plastic. So you're more likely to experience complications.
Well, your body's supposed to argue a bit.
Yeah. So there's. I think there'll be more research coming off about that now. But what blows my mind is, like, if I want to go and have my eyelashes dyed, I've got to go and have a patch test. But I had no patch test before. I had plastic mesh permanently implanted into me, and that's not mesh. That's all medical devices that, whatever it is being permanently implanted, they're not even thinking about what will the long-term
Here's a good one.
Of that be.
It's a quote from a guy called Christian Barnard, who's a nutcase in South Africa. He used to do heart transplants. And you think, oh great, but he did heart transplants. He started off with baboons, and then, but his thing was he wanted to put baboon hearts inside people. Christian Barnard, his name was. The Pope loved him. The first transplant he did, and we want, transplants work now. But when they first started with human beings, I remember That's Life in Esther Ranson. Yes. People who used to have transplants used to die very quickly. You did see that bloated face about them. But because human on human, once they started doing it, then that's when they, you do things by doing them and learning. But the actual quote from Christian Barnard, the first heart transplant he did of a baboon's heart into a human being, the operation was a success, but the patient died. Which is a bit the same with the mesh, you know.
It's the same,
The
yeah.
operation, no, that mesh
Yes.
is working. That mesh is doing what
Yeah.
it's meant to do. I can assure you, madam, you don't need to worry.
100%. So it's you know your head's turned, your head is buried just because it's fixed the problem. Oh, but your life is ruined. It's fix your incontinence, but you can't run. Never mind run the London Marathon. Yeah, it's
a couple of more comments than questions. I think it's Andrew wants to know whether you're going to be attending the debate in January.
London.
I would love to. It depends on the date,
Yeah.
because I work much. I'm a passionate patient safety advocate and passionate for animal welfare, but I do also work full time, and I'm running out of annual leave for this year. And I
Like your
hate
MP.
that. I would love to be able to do this. And I love my job. I'd hate if anyone works at my place to think, oh God, what's she going on about? I do love my job, but it's difficult juggling. Yeah, so I don't know. I'll try to be.
And
Can
then
I follow from that question and ask you about your political campaign? Because we are also trying to do political
Yeah.
campaign, and it's quite different, the
is.
work from the other type of campaign. And how
Yes.
did you find it, and how important you think it is?
It's key.
It's
The
key,
two
yeah.
things that key is you need to raise awareness in the media, because only when you raise awareness in the media do people start thinking, oh, hang on, they're looking, they're taking notice. And then, so the NHS, the regulators started worrying, oh my God, the media, the Daily Mail keep running these mesh stories. And whether you like the Daily Mail or not, that was powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And then BBC Victoria Derbyshire, Charlotte Lomas Farley on Sky News. She used to work at the Hunts Post actually, so, and became a good friend of mine. So I had friends and favours that I could pull in, but then it snowballed. So once your media coverage snowballs, people start realising they need to do something, and the politicians get involved. So media and politician support is absolutely vital, because you don't change anything
Yeah,
really until you've got those two elements.
yeah.
But it's hard work.
Yeah, we've had
find it
virtually
exhausting.
we do all our own media.
Yeah.
And you think us, puppies, cruelty,
Yeah.
it's like a tabloid dream.
But it's almost like a taboo, because you're fighting an established narrative. You're fighting this established PR spin that animal testing is a necessary evil.
A dog
because
or your
it's
baby.
curing your mum of cancer.
Yeah.
People that pay the papers.
Yes.
That's the other thing.
Yeah, but it's people are frightened to challenge the system, frightened to challenge what's an established belief.
It's
I'd
interesting
say.
what the animal rising people say, and then when they do a campaign against the dairy industry or against horse racing or against the meat industry, how
Yeah.
big's the meat industry?
Yeah.
They get massive loads of publicity. When they came here and took the dogs, liberated the dogs,
Yes.
they were expecting an avalanche, puppies
Wasn't
rescued. There wasn't anything.
A
It's
little
bec-
bit online, weren't there?
But
Yeah.
it is, and it's because of that powerful narrative. We all have a family member who's been ill and perhaps saved because of animal research. We need to break that
Yeah.
narrative that it's because of animal research and invest money in the modern science of stem cell, computer modelling, whatever all the modern methods are. We need to break down this fake narrative and PR spin that it's animal testing is a necessary evil. That's why people think it's saved family members, you see.
Yeah.
People think they can rely on it, but actually you can't.
Because the AR guys, they've not even been prosecuted over a year
No,
now.
I've been keeping an eye on that, yeah.
And let's be honest,
the
they did
first,
hide who they
the
were.
first 3 of June, the CPS dropped the charges,
Wow.
saying they hadn't got enough evidence.
Gosh.
And the guys who came in December,
Wow.
nothing's happened with that, is it?
No.
Well, the only AR people they did were the guys who went and sat inside, because they can do them for
Trespass.
aggravated trespass.
Thing is, they don't
but
want
that's
it in the
different,
papers.
because the other
No.
guys
Yes.
want to bring in the welfare,
Yeah.
and if you drag that through the courts, because there is no welfare
Yes.
in there, it's
It all
bang.
becomes embarrassing and awful.
And the
but it's-
secrecy's got to go.
Yes.
We're never going to call it science.
No.
We'll call it science
Well,
once
bad
it's
science.
open. It's
Bad
bad
science.
science. But we can't even call it bad science because they don't give us the science. We never get any feedback from LabCorp or Sequani or MBR telling us to shut up and these are the facts. These are the scientific facts. All
This
we
is why
get
we're
is
doing what we're
silence,
doing.
silence, silence. So until we get rid of that silence, or the PR bit on the surface, we can't. We're not in a position even to call it. Yeah, the bits we find, we'll call it bad science. But science the whole idea of it is to have a theory. Then you must put it amongst your peers, and that's what doesn't happen.
Yeah, and what needs to change, more money. If more money is invested in modern science, then it will, people will trust it more, it will get better, more people will do it. Do you know what I mean? We need that investment in modern science, but until people can change the narrative...
Yeah, but if we don't change the system, more money pummeled into like the NHS and so on, means more money for the bloody Glaxo shareholders. It filters through. It's a money game, and it shouldn't be, because we're talking about health.
Somebody mentioned about that on some comment. I think it was Sharon that says that you said about dismissing. When she challenged the doctors, she often gets dismissed.
Yes.
And she just, just take this pill, not looking at the root cause, just looking at the symptoms rather than the root cause of an issue. And she says she's often being dismissed when she goes to...
Yep.
There was another comment by Carl, who says, incredible talk today, thank you, and wants to know whether you've had any acknowledgement from the government for the work that you're doing.
Well,
you got an MBE, didn't you?
Oh, I don't. God, don't even start me. OBEs, MBEs, they go floating around. Even if I was offered one, I wouldn't want one. Thank you very much. I don't like the word empire in there. I don't like the connotation of imperialism, colonialism. Benjamin Zephaniah.
Yeah.
How could he take something that said empire?
Yeah.
And what the empire had done to the people around the world.
Absolutely. And what a tragic loss with his recent death. He was an amazing man for raising awareness of so many things, not least animal cruelty. And he lived locally in Spalding. He great guy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
ex-Brummy as well.
Yeah, ex-Brummy.
Once a Brummie, always a Brummie.
Yeah.
Never an ex-Brummie.
So recognition from government, no thanks in terms of OBE, absolutely not. But there was, well, if I hook it out, there was something called the First Do No Harm Review. So that was quite an important
What a
piece.
beautiful title. Did they come through with it? They said they banned it a bit. That's what it's all about. First do no harm. It's what the doctors take a Hippocratic oath. And that's forgotten about. It needs to be put back on the top of 100%. Every single agenda.
And in fact, I think they got that name from, there's a guy called Ken Lowndes who's really supported my campaign. He was a patient safety campaigner for many years, and he sort of joined our campaign. He's been superb. And it was him that kept saying about first do no harm. That's a Hippocratic oath.
The Hippocratic oath.
Yeah.
That should be the motto of the entire medical industry, and we need to bring it back to that.
Yeah, and that's what that report. So although that was on mesh, Primidos, and valproate, this big report here, it's saying all of the healthcare sector should be based on this.
Yeah.
And including obviously the animal research side.
Yeah.
So acknowledgement from government, I guess that. So I'm in that, if you like. But I don't need acknowledgement. We just want patient safety to be put before profits, I guess.
Yeah.
Does that answer that? I think. Are there any more?
No, that was all the questions.
There was there was another thing I was looking at this morning. The 3 R's.
Yeah.
Which is replace, reduce, and rethink animal testing.
Yeah.
And that was brought in 1958.
Yeah.
All right, so it tells...
And I'm like, but we're still not doing the 3 R's. This is like 60 years later.
On the latest report from the 3 R's themselves, it says something like, this is a very good
idea, but we're less than a little bit.
We have the finest regulations in the world. This is absolutely the most perfect system on the world. But this year, for the first time ever, and maybe even they're learning, on paper it says they're accepting that it's on, and so we're sensing within the industry.
On paper, it looks fantastic. Yeah, we're gonna do less. We're gonna replace it.
But doesn't mean I can write a job list. I'm going to paint my house, hoover, wash the windows. But the reality is I'm sitting watching Netflix, eating a bag of popcorn. That's what that is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
the LD50 test, that was developed in 1927. 1927. Wow. I mean, how far has science and chemistry go?
100%.
There is not a chemical that we cannot make, use, or that we don't know the toxicity of it. Yet they still have to put it in a dog.
But that's something that I'm like, my God, you need to actually say what you know, put into action what you're saying. These 3 R's. This is what we need: replace, reduce, rethink.
Yeah.
And the other key thing I think that needs to happen at the moment, before you run a clinical trial, either on humans or animals, you need to register it with a trials registry. So there's like one in Europe, There'll be one in America, one in Australia. There's different registries all over the world. So people are registering probably doing the same sort of trials all over the world. But you can't track it. If there was one global trials registry, that would reduce a lot of unnecessary animal cruelty. Because why are we doing this same trial, say, in 6 different countries, but you're perhaps not picking it up because it's on different trials registries? Oh man, there's so much needs to happen.
I've got brochures there. We're going to start publishing them. We've got internal brochures from the industry, and you really realise when you see the brochures, it's like, wow, this isn't multi-million. This really is multi-trillion stuff.
It is.
And you've got companies like these, like Marshall's, that, of course, they're not going to oppose repetition of experiments because they breed the animals. You know, so
they're not. Yeah, exactly. If that's paying for your private school for your kids and your fancy car and your cruise holidays, you're not gonna. You want to carry it on, don't you? But so there's lots to do. But you're doing it. I just want to say how amazing you guys are, because honestly, I do check in on your page most days. Some days I can't watch your lives because it just hurts my heart. And full credit for what you're doing. Yeah, and thank you.
We're all doing the same thing, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend, the enemy of my enemies. We're doing our thing here.
There's so many parallels, even with quite different campaigns, but I just feel total parallels with everything you're saying, and I think I really like that you've brought the patient safety of the animal testing angle.
We're at the bottom fighting against the use of animals, but you're at the other end where the disasters have come out, and you're
dealing with it.
We tell people, don't we, this goes way beyond some puppies. That's what we're here for. But it's dirty fingers and dirty pies, and we're all sick of the teeth of it. Yada yada.
Thank you very much for coming to our tent.
And thanks for everyone, Camp Beagle Posse, for sticking with us. All the technical hitches.
Thank you for sticking here and put up with all our technical failures. But we're on the side of the road and we're doing the best we can.
Right then. Bing bong, folks. Love yous all.